This is the player that I've selected as the sixth greatest small forward of all time, Rick Barry. This footage right here that you see is of him during his 55-point game outburst in Game 3 of 1967 NBA Finals. Interestingly about this game, of all the 50-point games he had, it probably was the worst shooting game he ever had. I believe he was only 22 of 48 from the field, and perhaps the worst shooting free throw game of his life. He only went 11 of 19 from the foul line. Had he just had an average game, or at least a game shooting 50%, and his normal close to 9% free throw percentage, he probably would set an NBA record that game as far as points. But he did have, interestingly, his career high game, which was 64 points. He shot 30 of 45 from the field, and he's the only man besides Wilt Chamberlain to connect on 30 field goals in one game. But anyway, the sixth greatest small forward of all time, in my opinion, is Rick Barry. Had this just been an NBA countdown, Rick Barry would have been a lot lower, but I include professional game, all professional game, including ABA. So, just my judgment, I have him at 6 all time. He was probably the greatest shooter of his era, and he was known for his very unorthodox free throw shot, which he shot underhanded, or granny style, if you want to say that. In today's era, this may look weird, and perhaps even, I hate to say it, maybe even effeminate. But it was very effective for Rick Barry. Rick Barry was a career 88% free throw shooter in the American Basketball Association, or ABA, and he was a 90% career foul shooter in the NBA. And professionally, he shot 89.3% for his career. He was also known for his fiery, controversial, and somewhat brash demeanor. Never one to mince words. And he also had a reputation for being a player who was not well liked, which I think has something to do with why he's not as revered in today's society as he I think he should be, because you can make a case that he was sort of like a precursor to Larry Bird, not quite as good as Larry Bird, but close to him in many ways, particularly later part of his career when he became more of a facilitator. He had some traits. He was one of the first point forwards to play in the game. Rick Barry attended the University of Miami, where he starred for 3 seasons. In his final year, he led the NCAA in scoring at 37.4 points per game. The 6'7", 205-pound Barry was taken with the second pick of the 1965 NBA draft by the San Francisco Warriors. Barry made an immediate impact on the team. They improved from 17 victories a year earlier to 35 wins. Barry won Rookie of the Year honors, averaging 25.7 points and hauling down 10.6 rebounds per game. The next season, Barry would become the first player other than Wilt Chamberlain to lead the NBA in scoring besides Bob Pettit. Since Bob Pettit, I should say. And Bob Pettit at that time had been retired for 2 years. Barry's scoring average of 35.6 points per game is still the 8th highest single season scoring average ever. And a little bit of a trivia thing, he has the highest scoring average for a white guy. I mean, just being honest, okay? Barry led his team to the 1967 NBA Finals against one of the greatest NBA teams of all time, the 1966-67 Philadelphia 76ers. He had that team with Wilt Chamberlain, Hal Greer, certain players elude me right now as far as their names. Chet Walker. That team had a lot of different players on there. Billy Cunningham, I believe, was on that team at that time too. That team was just Luke Jackson, different players. But anyway, that team went 68-13 in the regular season. They lost to the 76ers in 6 games. Barry averaged 40.8 points per game in that series, an NBA Finals record that stood until Michael Jordan broke it in 1993 against the Phoenix Suns. After that season, Berry left the NBA and joined the Oakland Oaks of the American Basketball Association after being offered a then unheard of $500,000 for 3 years. He was forced, due to a reserve clause in his contract with the Warriors, to sit out the 1967-68 season before he joined Oakland. He proved to be a great scorer as well in this new league. In his first year, the Oaks won the ABA championship. The team relocated to Washington in 1969 and became the Washington Caps. The next season, 1970-71, they once again relocated and became the Virginia Squires. Before the season started, Rick Barry was traded to the New York Nets. With the Nets, he led the ABA in scoring for 2 consecutive seasons. He is the only athlete to lead the NCAA, the NBA, and the ABA in scoring. In 1972, Barry's contract with the Nets expired, and he returned to the Golden State Warriors. By this time, Rick Barry was still pretty young at 28 years old, but a little bit older, and he had had some cumulative knee issues that forced him to sort of change his game a little bit. Before that, he was a pretty good rebounder for his position, pulling down 8 to 10 rebounds a game. He was more of a slasher. Even though he was a great shooter, he was still a guy who tried to penetrate the basket and get the foul line. Where by this time, he was 28, 29 years old, he started becoming more and more primarily a jump shooter. As I said, he was still a high scorer, but he no longer mixed it up inside, battling as much rebounds, not nearly driving as much as his basket. He relied more on his jump shot. He also became more of a facilitator for his team, setting up other guys. In 1974-75, it all came together for the Warriors. Barry led the NBA again in free throw percentage, and he led the NBA in steals. His team made it to the NBA Finals against the heavily favored Washington Bullets that had Wes Unseld, Phil Chenier, Elvin Hayes, all those guys in their prime. Their team was heavily favored to beat the Golden State Warriors. It was almost like a Rocky thing. I sometimes wonder whether that series, where the Warriors beat the Washington Bullets, where the Bullets would look. It was like sort of like the Lakers going against Detroit Pistons. I mean, that Bullets team was, check their roster out, okay? The Bullets did go on to win the championship in 1978, but this is when they were younger and in their prime. I mean, it was sort of like the Lakers, like I said, Lakers beating the Pistons in 2004. And I sometimes wonder whether this series and when Muhammad Ali fought Chuck Wepner in 1975, I wonder if that all was two things that influenced Sylvester Stallone to make that movie Rocky. But anyway, like I said, Barry and the Warriors shocked the sports world by sweeping the Bullets in 4 games, and Barry won NBA Finals MVP. Over the next few seasons, with players like Gus Williams, who eventually going to star with the Seattle Supersonics, and Phil Smith getting more scoring opportunities, Rick Barry's offensive production went down somewhat. But he still was a 20 points per game scorer. In 1978, Barry signed with the Houston Rockets and was now at age 34, primarily a point forward who was mostly an outside threat. He set a record at the time of hitting on 94.7% of his free throw attempts in the 1978-79 season, a mark that has since been eclipsed a couple times now by different players. In 1980, Rick Barry finally retired from professional basketball. He has some noteworthy accomplishments. For his professional career, Rick Barry scored a combined NBA, ABA 25,729 points for an average of 24.8 points per game. He averaged 6.7 rebounds per game, dished out 4.9 assists per game. And for his career, he shot about 45% from the field. Accolades. He was, his team won the 1975 NBA championship. He was the 1975 NBA Finals MVP. He was the ABA champion with the Oakland Oaks. He was an 8-time NBA All-Star. He was the 1967 NBA All-Star Game MVP, one of the highest scoring games for a player, 38 points in that game. He was a 4-time ABA All-Star, 5-time All-NBA First Team, once All-NBA Second Team, 4-time All-NBA First Team, and he was an NBA Rookie of the Year, as I said earlier. The He was on the NBA All-Rookie First Team. In college, he was on the consensus NCAA All-American First Team. In 1965, he was selected as one of the 50 greatest players of all time in 1996. His number 24 retired by the Golden State Warriors. He led the NBA in free throw percentage 6 times. I don't know the numbers offhand, but I would assume that it has to be a record. He led the NBA in free throw percentage 3 times. Rick Barry, one of the greatest shooters of all time, and my 6th greatest small forward of all time.